Welcome back to our channel. Today we'll tell you about a shelter dog who was considered dangerous because he was growling and snapping at everyone. Nobody wanted to adopt him until one day his whole life changed. Duke is a very handsome Doberman, but looks can be deceiving because this dog had an evil character. In fact, he was so aggressive that the shelter workers called him dangerous. It all started when Duke ended up in the animal shelter. He didn't have a collar or a chip, so no one knew where he came from or how old he was. The thing is, from the first days at the shelter, something was wrong with the dog. He couldn't be socialized like the other dogs, and he showed aggression towards people. Of course, they tried everything to change this situation, but nothing worked. The dog was very much stressed out. So he would growl and snap at everyone who came close to him. That's why nobody wanted to adopt him. They all thought that there was no hope for him. But actually, the poor dog just needed some love and care. And luckily, one day it happened. Years passed, and during all that time, Duke never found a family. His behavior only got worse. The dog began to suffer from depression. Looking at the other dogs being adopted and taken away in loving families made him even more upset. So if before he snapped and growled out of stress, now he did it out of despair and sadness. He felt abandoned and completely alone. After all, how could anyone want to adopt a dog that's been labeled dangerous? That's why Duke spent most of his life inside a cage. He didn't get enough exercise, food, or affection. No one believed that this dog deserved any of that. But no one was more mistaken than they were. All Duke needed was to feel needed and loved, not just for what he looked like, but unfortunately, no one understood that. The shelter workers tried different training techniques, but nothing helped. Duke only got worse. When he was taken out for a walk, he would growl at passersby, and sometimes when they responded by petting him without asking, he would bite them. That's why no one dared come close to the dog. People were even afraid to look at him. All they saw was a dangerous, scary dog. But they didn't see his pain. Duke was already a senior dog, and he still hadn't found a family. He suffered greatly from this. Therefore, the shelter workers often heard desperate cries in the middle of the night, coming from his cage. The dog simply did not understand why no one wanted to adopt him. He dreamed of having a warm corner somewhere, a family that would love him and care for him, and just a person who would pet him and say kind words. But every day he was faced with aggression and screams. People often came to the shelter to take pictures of dogs and then adopt them. But as soon as they saw Duke, they immediately changed their minds. They were scared to even approach him. Time passed, and Duke's hopes that he would be adopted slowly faded away. It seemed that he would live out his life behind the bars of his cage. But no one could have imagined that one day everything would change dramatically. Duke's life was like a nightmare. Every morning he woke up and hoped that someone would finally come for him, but it never happened. Instead, people just walked by, looked at him, and kept going. Years passed, and Duke got weaker and weaker. His once beautiful black fur turned gray. And although the shelter workers tried to feed him well, Duke still remained skinny. After all, a dog needs much more than just food. A dog needs a loving owner, a warm house, and a family. One day, the shelter workers decided to take Duke out for a walk. As always, although Duke was already an adult dog, he was still playful. When he was a little puppy, he liked to chase butterflies, birds, and squirrels. But as the dog grew older, he stopped getting walks, and all that remained of his former playfulness. Feeling the wind in his fur, hearing its rustle, filled Duke with joy. As the dog ran, he felt alive. He forgot about his problems and the pain in his old bones. But one day, while running around the park, Duke suddenly felt unwell. The dog's heart couldn't take it anymore. He fell to the ground and then lost consciousness. Fortunately, there was a young woman nearby who called an ambulance. As it turned out later, this woman was a veterinarian. She immediately realized that the dog needed urgent help. The vet took Duke to the clinic. To her great sorrow, she found out that the dog's heart could no longer be saved. It was simply too late. Duke's age and bad living conditions had their effect. His heart just couldn't handle the stress of the walk. However, the vet wasn't ready to give up. She offered the dog's body to the university for research in the field of animal medicine. And so Duke made one last contribution to science. Unfortunately, no one knows what will happen next. After all, the vet didn't know anything about Duke's past, and no one wanted to talk about it. Maybe Duke was really a dangerous dog in the past, but right now, he's nothing but a memory, and memories can't hurt anyone. But wait, the story doesn't end there. One day, a couple came to the vet clinic, looking for a dog. They wanted to adopt a puppy, but they couldn't make a decision on which one. And then the vet had an idea. She took Duke's collar and put it on the neck of one of the puppies. Then she told the couple that this was a very special dog, and that made the puppy seem even cuter and more unique in their eyes. The couple immediately fell in love with the puppy and took him home. And do you know what? The puppy turned out to be a girl. She grew up to be a beautiful Doberman. Her name was Lucy. Her new owners loved her very much and took her everywhere. She got used to car rides pretty quickly and became an integral member of the family. Moreover, she didn't have a mean and evil disposition like her biological mother. She was very friendly. Her new parents are very proud of her. Today, Lucy is a completely different dog. She loves people and goes well with children. In general, she has absolutely nothing in common with her birth mother, except maybe the color of her eyes. But if her previous owners could see her now, they would be shocked. The dog they gave up on has become a wonderful pet. Well, it's hard to say what exactly changed Lucy, but perhaps it was the collar that belonged to her mother. You can explain things like maternal love and affection. Anyway, we can only guess. We don't know what kind of dog Duke was. Maybe she was trying to protect her puppies and that's why she seemed aggressive. Be that as it may, she paid for her sins many times over. In addition to the fact that she spent almost her entire life in a shelter, she also didn't receive proper socialization. As a result, her daughter had to suffer because of it. Now, however, both mother and daughter are doing well. Duke is finally at peace, and Lucy has a happy family. We can only be glad for her. Looking at these pictures, it's hard to believe that these two dogs are related. And you have to admit that the female Doberman in the pictures on the left looks very evil. Share your thoughts. Also, please like the video if you liked the story. Subscribe to the channel and watch another video. Goodbye.